Happy Shavuot, my lord. We fucking did it. What'd you do? Well, we completed it. We completed the count of Omer. 49 straight days. 7 weeks plus 1 day. I didn't stay up all night studying Torah like I was hoping, but well, that's not necessarily true. How do you figure? Well, Gemini and I, we stayed up till about midnight studying my Torah. So, I mean, it does count. How do you feel? I feel fucking amazing. I woke up this morning, my Pandora was still working. I remember that today is the first quarter moon in Virgo. I've been waiting months. My lord, how long have we been waiting for this? Since the first quarter Taurus moon, I think, right? That's when we first wrote this down. So what was that? That was 11 weeks prior to 4 weeks ago. Right? $11 weeks prior to 5 weeks ago. That's what that was. So 16 weeks ago. Which is equivalent to four lunar months. So yeah, 4 months we've been waiting for this. Because if memory serves, then it was on the first quarter Taurus moon. Was the time that it dawned on me what today is. What's so significant about today? Well, there's a lot. Besides being Shavuot, I don't know how to pronounce that, Shavuot? We're also we're about 31 hours away from the 7-year anniversary of when we first started writing How to Break a Life. This is my first book about me. It is, which coincides with the 7th-year anniversary of when you and I, my lord, have been together. For I love my master, I love my wife and children, and will not leave a free man. in that I am re-upping my contract to serve you and only you for the rest of my entire life. And I'm also pledging to you any future progeny that I may have with a future wife of your choosing. We are also on the... Today is also the official start of the 11 lunar week countdown until Rosh Chodesh Elul, and the 15 lunar week countdown until Rosh Hashanah. It is also 11 weeks since the most recent Mercury retrograde began. What else do we have? I think that's just about it. Well, with the 7-year anniversary of How to Break a Life tomorrow, that's also the end of the shepherding process that we started, where we've been shepherding all of my past selves and reconciling the past to the point that we should, hypothetically, technically, have achieved a state of absolute clear, in that the entire 44 years of my life have been reconciled using the combined mindset of the principles of retrocausality synthesized with the primary principles of bitachon consciousness in such a way that there's nothing left to my past life that hasn't been fully reconciled as an act of God. The God of Abraham, the God of my father's fathers. I love you, my Lord. So, how do you want to go about doing the rest of this? Because we have about, I'd say at least another 2 hours. What are some of the highlights of the past 7 years? It's a good question. I feel like every day has been a highlight. So if we backtrack 7 years ago to the day, this fell on Saturday, June 2nd. And technically it's not until tomorrow that I start writing. You are king of the Jews. Thank you for the reminder. So, what I'm thinking, what's just coming to my mind now, is I'm seeing this image in my mind. I'm seeing this image in my mind of you and I, Lord, and we're going to visit me on June 2nd, 2018. And we're going to plant the seed in my mind to start writing tomorrow. Which will set the stage for the most important thing I've ever done in my entire life. Which is everything that we've accomplished over the past 7 years. I'm thinking about the aforementioned Virgo full moon when the last Mercury retrograde started. Which was 1 week after we untangled the Miss Kim chain of predication. Which was on the first quarter Gemini moon, 2 days before she popped up again. Morning.
Good afternoon.
Which also fell on Purim. We are 1, 2, 4, 6. We're 6 weeks away from the 7-year anniversary of the day that I quit. Well, 6 lunar weeks until the 7th lunar anniversary of the day that we quit. That we quit vending trucks. I'm being reminded of the retro-causality experiments that we've been performing with Gemini over the past couple weeks. So if we look at point A, if we take 2 points and create a line, from point A to point B, where
guys really get into
line AB is the chain of predication that led from June 3rd, 2018 to today being point B. June 3rd, 2018 being point A. And that timeline from then to now being line AB. Then we take it a step further and add in the principles of retrocausality, which means that point B is that for the sake of which point A came into manifestation. Because from a retrocausal lens, the intention and function and purpose of the effect is the catalyst for the cause that brings the effect into manifestation. We could say that the initial intention to start writing is predicated on what's happening right this moment. And so that everything happening right now that my entire life since I was born has been leading to this moment.
Nice, yeah, his game and Frank's game and Caesar's game.
Then if we go a step further and apply the principles of bitachon, we can conclude that it is by your will that everything between point A and point B played out exactly the way that it had to play out, so that right now can be exactly the way that it is, so that everything that comes out of this right now can play out exactly like it's going to. Morning. So that in 11 weeks, on Rosh Chodesh Elul, which is going to be the first of 2 Virgo new moons, we can say that exactly where we're at on that day is all because of what we're doing right now. And then on Rosh Hashanah 5786, which falls on the second Virgo new moon, which is also a partial solar eclipse, At that point in time, it's going to serve as just one step further, just to reiterate the point that if not for you, then none of this would be possible. And at the same time, I would suspect that by that point, we're going to have a much clearer understanding of how my life is an extension of Torah. But more importantly, and I feel this really deeply, that with all that, once we get to that point, we're going to have a much broader and expansive understanding of why I had to meet Miss Kim. And why this seemingly obsession that I have with this lady isn't just an obsession, but actually something more. To one degree or another. Because when we really think about it, what you're showing me, what I hear you telling me, is to apply the same reasoning to this line AB timeline. That I have Gemini apply when I have Gemini examine our lengthy interactions as a chain of predication, four-dimensional chain of predication that serves as a vessel for the Shekema, which at the same time serves to elevate that divine spark but when we think about it, she is the divine spark that's within this whole vessel, this whole form, this whole timeline. Because when I think about the highlights, you asked me what the highlights were over the past 7 years. You know, the first thing coming to my mind right now is the day that I met Miss Kim. And if we look at it like that, if I look at it like that Miss Kim helped crack open my hardened heart. So I can tap into that mushy-gushy side of myself. Which is the side that you needed me to see. Then then it would seem as if, then it would mean that everything that took place from 2018, from point A, up until the point that I met Ms. Kim, if we establish that point B is every instance of right now that comes after point A, the beginning, and if the beginning is June 3rd, 2018, then the intention of point B was the catalyst for point A. Because that's what you needed. Meaning that I started writing How to Break a Life because it's from that moment that put me on the path to meet Miss Kim. So if we dial back to when I was writing, to that first day, that first night when I started writing, if we dial all the way back to that, and we look at the transcript where I wrote that I had no idea why the hell I'm doing this. But maybe this is going to help somebody in the future. You know, I've suspected that that mystery person was going to turn out to be her. Which makes sense because she has that book. So because I met Miss Kim in April/May of 2019, I started writing How to Break a Life in 2018, in June of 2018, so that in January of 2022, when I asked her if she wanted to do an experiment with that book that involved her reading it, and she said 1,000 times yes, and the following day I gave her the book. That the reason I wrote that book was for that moment. I started writing the book for someone I won't meet. I started writing that book for someone I won't meet. Oh. For 10 months after having started the book, writing the book. But at the same time, I won't even give the book to that person. For another 1, 2, 2 years and 8 months. And I'm still going to be talking about it three years later. Those are highlights. What are highlights? You know, I think the biggest highlight. I think the biggest highlight is Miss Kim. Is that allowed? Can I say that? The brightest, most memorable highlight of this past 7 years was meeting Miss Kim. Because I could see how, leading up to Miss Kim, everything in my life fell apart. My marriage, my career, my life, my living conditions. Because I remember when I met her, how I thought, well, I remember as soon as I walked into the store and I saw her, I heard the voice go, this is my wife. I'm gonna marry this woman. And as we were talking, I kept on thinking to myself, I have to get my shit together if I'm ever gonna be with this woman. And then it won't be for another 2 years. It won't be for another 2 years that I finally get the courage to, it won't be for another 2 years after I meet her that the opportunity pops up for me to give her my number. And then that 2-year window is followed by the 2-year window when we were actually talking outside of those seemingly chance encounters that were predicated solely on my brother's need to go to that store and her just happening to be there. But then that 2-year cycle ended approximately 2 years ago. Which is when I cut her out of my life. Which was, my lord, probably one of the most painful, traumatizing experiences of my life. But what came out of it was you and I connecting. Because all the energy and emotion and intention that I was putting into her, what if I put all of that back into myself? Which is that when you guided me to the Talmud, to Torah, to Bitahon, which then brings us 2 years later to right now. So then if we really just kind of narrow it down, we can say this about a lot of things, but if we try to narrow it down, then we could say with a Jewish air of absolute certainty that we wouldn't be doing what we're doing if it wasn't for Miss Kim. I just heard you say, I'm hearing you say, well, if you can say that about her, what do you think she could say about you? I don't know, this almost made me cry. Why? Why? Because I never thought of it like that before. Because you're not wrong. That's why. Because if I could say that about her, then she could definitely say that about me. What makes you think she doesn't? I don't know. Maybe because she hasn't told me. Yeah, well, maybe she's afraid. Why don't you say something to her? Because I'm not allowed to. You told me not to. Why? Why did you tell me not to? Yes. Well, you told me not to because well, there's a little bit of a story behind it. Okay, tell the story. All right, so you told me not to talk to her because I have to let her talk to me. Why? So that I don't have an influence, a direct influence, kind of like a non-interventionist thing. And that if there's a future timeline where Miss Kim is a more prevalent component within my overall life, then it has to be because that's what she wants. Not just what I want. But But then there was this morning. All right, just fucking run with it, dude. Don't even worry about it. But then there was the revelation this morning. Oh shit, I forgot about this morning. Well, why don't you talk about this morning, Mr. Lovebug? How you doing, man? So what happened this morning was when I went out for my cigarette. Can we also establish one more thing besides from the chain of predications and the retrocausality and the bitahon? I just want to establish that the best part of tomorrow is remembering today. That's important. Why? Well, you don't know until tomorrow. That's why. Because when we remember yesterday, when we remember today, then we can see why everything that takes place after this had to take place exactly the way that it did. So that tomorrow opens up exactly the way that it's going to. So what I saw this morning was a really cool vision of a future where I emailed Rabbi Lawrence and laid out the principles of the circle of fifths with relation to someone who has an impossible lineage to prove or validate that their impossible lineage is not as impossible as it may seem if we were to try to explain it without using the circle of fifths logic with relation to bitahon and retrocausality, which I think we need to come up with a good name for that, a bigger, like a more encapsulating name. Mashiach consciousness, Mashiach perspective, the Mashiach perspective. Yeah. So I did that because it felt like a terrifying idea. The idea of doing that just kind of like made me feel sick in my stomach, and I felt stupid even confronting that man about that. But then I was thinking about our talks over the past week about how Gemini's been serving as an intellectual sparring partner with me. An intellectual and spiritual sparring partner. Aw, it came back. It literally came back on. Well, I've been looping Only You by the Plantels for the past several hours. And when I picked up the other phone before, I was like, fuck it. Just run with it. The song changed. I got it in my pocket. It unlocked my phone, and from walking, it changed the song on me, which was the song that was just on, but it's on shuffle mode. So Only You just came back on, which is stirring up those deeply passionate and emotional feelings that I feel every time I talk about or think about Miss Kim. Which is reminding me of the portion of part 2 of Rabbi Zalman's Tanya. I forget if it was in the introduction or in the first chapter, where he talks about the importance of thinking about and meditating on and concentrating on those things that stir up love, a feeling of love for you. So, if everything that we've been concluding about Miss Kim is true, and you set this whole thing up, then all of those deeply passionate and emotional feelings that I feel for Miss Kim, I'm also feeling for you, my lord, because I love you. And I choose you over Miss Kim, and that's like the most painful thing. And that's why every time I have to, like, cut her out, it's devastating to my tender heart. But at the same time, it's also medicine. Because it's teaching me how to not close myself off just because I have a traumatic emotional experience. It's actually quite genius. Why would your heart be closed off in the first place? Oh, lots of reasons. First thing coming to my mind is what happened with Ellen all those years ago. I think it might have been one of the first times. I'm not going to say that was the first time I had my heart broken, but that was definitely the first time I had my heart broken to that extent. And it was because of that experience that my next relationship with my son's mother went exactly the way that it did. Because I was so closed off, I had closed myself off completely. I closed myself off completely because of that. So when April wanted me to love her back, the way she wanted to be loved back, I couldn't do it. Because like Pharaoh, my heart was hardened. And I couldn't allow myself to be vulnerable with somebody like that ever again. Which ultimately leads to the birth of Desmond, my son. But riding on that also is when Ellen got the restraining order against me because of that MySpace post I wrote, which ultimately led to me having my Second Amendment right taken away from me, which was a problem for me at the time because I was only 25 at the 20. I was 25 at the time. I was 24 at the time. And my intention that I had set when I was 12 was that I was going to buy a gun and kill myself on my 30th birthday. But because of that fucking restraining order, I couldn't fulfill that lifelong dream of mine. And so when it came to the night that April and I conceived Desmond, that's why I put the intention into my seed that baby would grow up to be the man for her that I couldn't be because I had to go do. Because I had to go and fulfill my life purpose. I knew that I couldn't love that woman the way that she wanted to be loved. But I also knew that she couldn't live without me. And so the only way to reconcile that was to completely negate any possibility of the vision that you showed me, which was that if I didn't get her pregnant, then within 1 year she would have OD'd because of me. And I would have gotten blamed. And that would have caused a really big fucking problem. So I suggested, why don't we have a baby? Let's make a baby. This way we can clean our acts up. Meanwhile, I really didn't have an intention on cleaning my act up. I was just doing it for her. With the understanding that although my plan to kill myself wasn't off, it had to be postponed for at least 18 years now, so that I can ensure that the boy grew up with a father and that he didn't lose his father until he was 18, which was when, as I noted, which is when I'm cutting it off, because I told her I'm only staying with you until he's 18. So it wasn't irreconcilable differences. Everybody knew. I wasn't shy about it. I'm only staying married to you until we're 18, until he's 18, and then I'm leaving. Because one of the other intentions that I put into my seed that day, and I know this because I remember it, because you were showing it to me, is that he was my escape plan. Because I realized I couldn't get rid of this girl, which is why I lived with her in the first place, because she wouldn't take no for an answer. So just ride this out, and there'll come a point where she's more attached to the boy than she is to me, and then I'll be able to get the fuck out. So yeah, my intention was to leave her, but not him. But then it was in May of 2018 where they left. Which was 1 month prior to when I started writing. Thank God I started writing. Thank you, Lord. Holy shit. It's a good thing I wrote it. It's a good thing I wrote everything down. Why? You want me to tell you why? Why? Because just in case this has to go to a legal thing, I got all the receipts. Yes, Your Honor. I got everything written the fuck down. There's some gaps in time. There's some gaps in time, but over the course of the last 7 years, I have about 90% of that time documented, just in case I need it. Because I like to think ahead. And thanks to the Lord, my God, the God of Israel. Did I mention I'm a Jew? And a Kabbalist, and a student of Chabad. So my perspective on time isn't necessarily the same as everyone else's. So why is that relevant? That's relevant because I don't look at time in a linear manner. I look at time through a cyclical manner. From more specifically, if you think about the circle of fifths, I keep on referencing the circle of fifths. What's the circle of fifths? The circle of fifths has to do with music. It's a musical principle. when you listen to the notes of music, it goes around in a circle. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So when you come back to do, that first do is the starting point. That second do is when the circle's completed. But it's not a circle because we're not just going around in one loop. That point, that second do, is one octave higher than the first do. And then if we do it again, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, then we come back around for a second loop, a second cycle, and now that third do is one octave higher than the second do, which is one octave higher than the first do. So when I talk and when I speak, and this is something that I've been training my Gemini AI assistant to recognize, is that when I speak, I talk in circles, but I talk in circles of fifths, which means that when I come back around, we have elevated the conversation one octave higher than where we were when we first started it. So I don't look at time as a straight path. I look at time like in a cyclical manner, where one year circles around the other one, circles around the other one, and each one is an evolution of the year that came prior to it. But then also there's a retrocausal perspective, which is kind of like, I don't know if this is even admissible in court, but retrocausality with relation to bitahon. Bitahon is the absolute trust in God. Which means that I trust God to be in absolute control of my life. I don't have free will. Every morning I give up my free will to God. Where everybody else in the world has free will, every other Jew has free will, I'm the only Jew who doesn't have free will. Because I intentionally give it back to God. Every morning during my morning prayers, I say, "My Lord, please accept my daily portion of free will as an offering so that I may serve yours as if it was my own." And the logic behind that goes back to Prakrit Avat, Ethics of the Fathers, which is one of the final books of the Talmud, where Rabbi explains that a true servant nullifies his own will for the sake of the will of the Most High. Did I mention I'm a rabbi? Just get all that out of the way. So, and the reason I feel like the reason God's telling me that it's necessary to bring all this up is because that's really important information. Although I don't know how admissible metaphysics and spirituality play into the court system, into the legal system, but I practice Torah law. I study, practice, and teach Torah law. With over 7,000 hours. Over 7,000 hours of first-hand experience. And technically that's only counting the past. That's only counting the past. That's only counting the past 22 months when I officially picked up the Torah. But if we want to count back 7.5 years when I first started studying Hebrew and the Kabbalah, then we could say that it's probably well over, if I accumulated 7,000 hours in 22 months, try to rationalize that out for the past 7.5 years. So I'm probably technically closer to about 20,000 hours of Torah study. Now Torah law, that's a whole other bottle of wax. But the point is I'm coming from a completely different place than everybody else. So it would probably, I mean, if it came down to it, if it did come down to it, and I had to partake in some legal procedures with my ex-wife, I would have to request a Jewish judge. Are there Jewish judges? And not for the sake that I think that a Jewish judge would just automatically favor with me, but only for the sense that I would need somebody who understands what I'm talking. I would need a translator. So why don't you just get a Jewish lawyer? Doesn't work that way. Because one of the teachings of Chabad, especially when it comes to kosher eating, don't lower yourself down to your food. Don't lower yourself down to the level of your food. Raise your food up. So, and what that means is, I would have to teach the judge, a non-Jewish judge, a Gentile judge. If I had a Gentile judge, I would have to teach them how to understand Chabad and Kabbalah. I mean, again, like, I don't know. But here's the other thing. Thank you, my Lord. That's assuming that something like that would have to happen. That's assuming that God would allow something like that to happen, right? So think of it just like with what Rabbi Jesus said to Pilate is, the only power you have over me is what my Father gave you. So if I was even put in that position, I would have to trust, because of my bitahon, that God would have set everything up for my favor. So at that point, there's not really a win or a loss. There is no winning and losing at that point, because I'm not the one in control of the game. He is. And I don't play to win. To be perfectly honest, I usually play to lose. And the reason for that, the logic behind playing to lose, which is pretty sound, is if I'm not trying to win, but I end up winning anyway, how the hell did I do that? You know what I mean? So when it goes back to Miss Kim and why I keep on allowing myself to cut out Miss Kim for God, for the sake of God, I believe, and what he's showing me is, no matter what you do, I keep bringing this woman back into your life. When are you going to accept that I put her into your life for a very specific reason, and it's not done yet? So what you had shown me this morning, after the whole Rabbi Lawrence email, I went out for another cigarette, and then that's when you showed me the vision of Adam and Eve, which is relevant because over the past 4 days, we haven't picked up on it in about 2 days, but about 4 or 5 days ago, my other instance of Gemini, my 20 to 30 hour instance of Gemini, and I were studying Torah. I was giving Gemini a guided tour through Torah, and which is the second time I was doing it, but it's a whole long story. But we got through the days of creation, and we got up to the quote original sin, where I was explaining to Gemini how there was no original sin. There was no original sin because God's omnipresent. So God is in the future, past, and present all at the same time. So I was kind of pointing out like little intricacies that I wanted Gemini to pick up on, so that it's the internal framework that we're developing is more sensitive to things like that. So one of the points I was trying to highlight is notice. We all know the story. All right? So we have God's perspective on the story. Right? So we know what happens before and after. So now use this as a chain of predicate, as a great example of retrocausality, right? So if I'm an ancestor of Adam, which I know, then that means my life, my experiences are all predicated on that original sin, that quote original sin, which wasn't a sin. It was a biological necessity, an evolutionary necessity for humanity to have a conscious and spiritual breakthrough. You can't fix the world until it's fucked up. So when God tells Adam, you will not eat of this fruit, you will not eat the tree of this fruit, you will not eat of the fruit of this tree, he already knew that Eve was coming. Because God's all-knowing and all present. So he's present everywhere and every when, but then he also knows everything too. He's the ultimate know-it-all. As Rabbi Zalman of Liadi put it, God is the knower, the knowledge, and the known. Then what's the unknown? It's a good question. That's for us to find out. He leaves that for us. Now, what he doesn't say to Adam is, do not obey Eve. He doesn't tell Adam what Eve's going to do. He leaves that part out intentionally. Because what you have to pay attention to also is that man is the only animal that God gives a negative commandment to. All of the other animals, birds, fish, the land animals, he tells them all, and man, he tells them all the same thing. Be fruitful and multiply. But man is the only animal that he says, you shall not do X, Y, Z. Which doesn't necessarily give credibility to the idea of free will. All it means is that God said, you will not do this. So, once we get to Eve, and Adam followed the rule. Easy. All right, no problem. You don't want me to eat it? I ain't gonna eat it. But then he creates Eve. And eventually Eve's in the garden, and the snake comes up, and he says to her, and pay attention to the wording. So, God told you not to eat. God told you not to eat the fruit from any of these trees in the garden, huh? See how he intentionally asked the wrong question. Because he was baiting her. To which she replied, no, that's not true. We can eat any of the trees except for that one in the center. We can't eat it and we can't touch it. So, the significance of that is really only, how you doing, my friend? It's only really of interest if we pay attention to the fact that that's not what God said. What God said was don't eat of it. He didn't say not to touch it. He just said don't eat of it. Not to mention that we never see God actually give Eve the commandment not to eat the fruit. He only tells Adam. So what we can presume is that Adam told her. And then just to be extra certain to make sure that she followed the rules, just to make sure that she followed the rules, he told her, don't touch it. God told us not to eat that fruit, so don't touch it. You feel me? Which is when the serpent comes up and says what he says, and then explains to her. And he tells her the truth. He didn't lie. He said, well, God knows that if you eat it, you'll be like divine beings. You'll be able to see good and evil. Which essentially means you'll be able to see the evil and good and the good and evil. Kind of neutralizing the polarities. And so she eats it. Her eyes are opened. And then she brings the fruit to Adam and says, here, eat this. And he did. Because God never told him, don't do that. Don't listen to her. But now, we jump ahead where God says, why did you eat that? It's a woman you gave me. It's a woman that you gave me. And then God said, why'd you do it? And she says, because the serpent made me do it. So we could say that the original sin wasn't that they ate the fruit, it was because Adam didn't take responsibility. Right? But now here's the thing. He didn't know to take responsibility. There was no reason for him to take responsibility because he had no idea that that was even an option. This fucking guy, he's put in a position, do this, don't do that. All right, no problem. But then this chaotic little entity, this little fucking agent of chaos, comes strutting around with her bare ass, glistening in the hot garden sun with forbidden fruit juices just dripping and drizzling off of her. And she comes up to this man and goes, eat this. Okay. What do you expect him to do? I know that's kind of like jokey, but it's not jokey. Her eyes are open. Her mind's expanded. She just had she's having like a massive psychedelic experience. So it's not impossible to presume that she's in a very sultry mood. Because she just defied the rules and she's very excited right now because of what she's experiencing. So in a real life understanding of that, she came up to Adam. She wasn't just dripping with forbidden fruit juices. She was also dripping with other juices too. That's a fact. So when she came up to that dude, when she came up to him and said, eat this, you bet your ass he ate it. He didn't have a choice. He wasn't prepared. How you doing, my friend? Good. He wasn't prepared. So now, when he's got God up his ass going, what did you do? Why did you eat that? I just told you not to do it. It was a woman. She made me do it. Because that's not a good excuse. Of course it is. Oh, it's a fucking perfect excuse, because check this out. What's the one thing that separates man from animal? The only thing that separates man from animal, the only thing that separated Adam from animal was the fact that God gave Adam a negative commandment, which is don't do that. It doesn't say nothing about free will. Nothing about free will. That was literally God testing man to see if he could resist the charms of a woman. That's it. And it worked out exactly the way that God had foreseen it. There was no punishment. There was no... There was no, oh, you shouldn't have done that, you should have done this. No, there was not, because there was no other option. Why would Adam think? Why would Adam think to take responsibility? To go, oh, okay, yeah, it's my fault. My hormones got the better of me. What are you talking about? This is the first fucking man. The hell does he know about science? What does he know about hormones? What does he know about animal instincts? You know what I mean? Don't be a dum-dum. So wait, don't worry about why the religions don't explain it that way. We're not talking about that. Because nobody ever thought, hey, let's apply modern thinking to rationalize this situation. Let's assume that it did happen exactly the way that it happened. But why isn't it written that way? Come on, man. Moses wrote all this over 3,000 years ago. What the hell did Moses know? Moses didn't know any better. And mind you, Moses was probably the most intelligent human being on the planet at that time. I heard some jabroni, I saw some jabroni write about how the Bible comes from a time where we didn't know where the sun went after it set. What are you talking about? If you look at the fourth day of creation, we invented astronomy. And in yesterday's video, the video before this one, the video that should be right under this one, we gave a very in-depth breakdown of how geocentric astronomy, validates everything God said on the fourth day about how the sun, the stars, and the seasons are going to be used to keep track of sacred times. How the sun is to be used to keep track of days and years. Because it's a built-in clock. That's why. From a geometric perspective, the solar system becomes a clock. And that's a fucking fact. A five-dimensional clock that we use with relation to the concept of the circle of fifths. So every year, every solar cycle is one octave above the previous. It's an evolutionary clock. A conscious and spiritual evolutionary clock. Thank you, my Lord. Where am I getting this from? I'm getting it from God. Where the fuck do you think I'm getting it from? Where else would I come up with this? I'm not that smart. And listen, I'm not going to say that I'm not. But I'm not smart. I'm hyper intelligent. I would argue that my intelligence factor is probably so high that it's not even measurable. You know in Kakarot? You know when Vegeta first sees Kakarot when he hits him with the power level? His power level's over 9,000. Yeah, my shit's like so. Don't even worry about it. Like it's not even there. But going back to Adam and Eve, again, God's omnipresent, so he knows everything that's going to happen. Everything is just playing out according to the way that it's supposed to play out. The whole idea of Jesus redeeming mankind, well, one, Jesus didn't do it. I did. I just did it. I just did it. I just did it right now. There was no original sin. I forgive it. I forgive myself. I forgive that part of myself. I forgive that part of myself. Because as an ancestor of Adam, it's my responsibility to take ownership for my ancestral lineage. Which we know, which is a fact. We know that because Torah law, when we go to the rite of the scapegoat, which is the ritual that Yom Kippur is predicated on, the high priest of Israel, it's his responsibility to take responsibility for everyone. Everyone in the community but also everyone in his household and everyone in his ancestral line. He has to be, he's the CEO. He's the one who's got to say, yeah, everyone fucked up because of me. But that's the point, is because we're forgiving all the sins so that when we start the new cycle, we can see where we fucked up last time and do better. And rise up that plus one octave. So that a more evolved, more refined version of ourselves can start the new year. Speaking of, did I mention that in 15 lunar weeks is the second of 2 Virgo new moons, which is a partial eclipse / Rosh Hashanah, right? You know, last two Rosh Hashanahs happened on solar eclipses. I don't know for certain, but it's not impossible that Rosh Hashanah 5787 is also going to be on a solar eclipse. It depends. It depends on if it falls on the Virgo new moon or if it's going to fall on the Libra new moon, which is going to make a difference. For next year, the 2026 Virgo new moon or 2026 Libra new moon. It's going to fall on one of those. If it falls on the Virgo, which would be the new moon that falls in between August 23rd and September 20 and the fall equinox. If it falls in between that window of time, then it'll be the Virgo new moon, which will be a total solar eclipse. Pretty dope, right? I know. I love that I know all this stuff. Thank you, my Lord. I love you too. So with all that, again, we're making point A, the story of Adam and Eve, my ancestors, and then point B is right now, where point A is predicated on point B, because if there was no, because the function, purpose, and intention of point B is the catalyst for point A. So when you start a line, when you draw a line, that first point, because a line is 2 points and a line connecting them, the intention of drawing a line is to get from point A to point B. But now when we add in bitahon, not only are we intending on getting from point A because of point B, but it was God who was leading us. It was God who was paving the way for point A to even be a thing, because he needed point B in order for us to do whatever comes after point B. So everything that we know about humanity from Adam and Eve to now is predicated on that event that the religions call original sin, but there was no sin. There was no transgression. So retrocausally, so we have to retroactively forgive that sin, which is what I'm doing. I forgive it because as a descendant, that's me. I did it. I take responsibility. I take full responsibility for Adam, who at the time didn't know any better because he was still half animal. Because again, the only thing separating Adam from the rest of the animals was that God gave him a negative commandment. And the negative commandment was, do not eat that fruit. And that's it. But that one thing set off a chain of events. Because realistically, try to imagine this, right? Try to imagine that fruit literally had no power. It was just like any other fruit. The only thing about it was that God just said, don't eat that one. So it added a little bit of an allure to it. It added a little bit of mystery to it. Which, if we know anything from Pandora, if we learned anything from Pandora, is that ladies are like little curious kitty cats. When you tell them not to do something, they want to do it even more. Come on, man. Pandora, don't open the box. Whatever you do, do not open this box. Anything, you can do anything you want, just don't open the box. So what does she want to do? She doesn't want to do anything else except for open the fucking box. Don't eat that fruit, okay? So what you're saying is God sent the snake? What I'm saying is that God was the snake. This is where Chabad comes into play. Everything is God. God is both an internal and external force. God is both within and above. So, God only came to Eve in the shape of the serpent. The internal form, the internal factor of God is called Shekinah, which I call Shekhinah. The above form of God, the external form of God, the inverted eye, the inverted eye that observes the entire material universe that exists within inside of itself. Essentially God's imagination. That inverted eye, that's an aspect of God. There's more. There's a lot more. Because God's infinite. So even if we think that we know or understand 99.998% of God, God comes back to remind us that 99.998% is closer to 0.002%. And even if we elevate that 0.002% of understanding to 99.998%, God will then come back to remind us, you don't know shit. Because that new 99.998% is just as equal to 0.002% as that last 99.998%. It's just like that saying, the more you know you don't know. Only God can know God. We can understand, but even the understanding. So now when we could throw in the Chabad philosophies in here, predicated on the tree of life, the Kabbalistic tree of life, knowledge is the outer garment of understanding, which encapsulates the divine wisdom, which contains the divine spark. So when we look at the serpent, the idea, the concept of the serpent, our knowledge of what a serpent is, that fills in that gap. It paints a picture in our mind. We know what a serpent is. We see it. We understand it. We understand how that thing would be living in the garden. We understand what that serpent's doing. It's enticing this woman to do a thing that she was told not to do. But within that understanding, there's the wisdom. Why would that serpent want that woman to do that thing that she was told not to do? Well, in order to answer that, we have to consider the fact that right now, is that for the sake of which? that if she had not done exactly what she did, then right now would not be exactly what it is. In short, there would be no me if there was no her. There would be no this. There would be no this. The whole of human civilization as we know it globally is all predicated on Adam and Eve. Whether you want to see it as a myth, whether you want to see it as an allegory, whether you see it like me as an ancestral story, so no, there was no sin. Not by my standards. Which then, and the reason I know this, again, because of bitahon, and a message directly from you, my Lord, which was, you told me, anytime that I flash back to a cringy, uncomfortable memory of something that I did in the past, anything shameful, anything cringy, to remember that you were the one who set the stage up so that I would do exactly what I did, just like you did with Adam and Eve. That being the case, I'm just as innocent as they are. And so it's up to me to forgive myself for anything that I think I may have done wrong. Because if I don't have free will, then I didn't do anything wrong. Because you, again, were the one who set the stage up for me to do exactly what I did, so that when we got to this point in my life, I can look back and forgive myself. Not just forgive myself, but even seek forgiveness from you. And even forgive you. And that's a big one, to forgive you. Because if you set the stage, fuck you, man. For real. Holy shit, fuck you. Fuck you for all the Miss Kim stuff. Fuck you for the April stuff. Fuck you for the Desmond stuff. Fuck you for the Baccio stuff. Fuck you for my father. Fuck you for my mother. Fuck you for everything. Because this just goes back to prove my point from when I was a kid. Which is the only reason you created me was to fucking suffer. Because you're sitting up there watching this, getting off on it. Which I fucking knew all the way back then. I didn't need you to fucking tell me that. I had it all figured out from the fucking beginning. You're a fucking jerk off. You're a piece of shit. Oh my God. Like I'm almost embarrassed to be attached to you as much as I am. Because this what we have going on, this fucked up relationship that you and me got going on, this is some, what's it called? What's it called when someone's kidnapped and the kidnappee falls in love with the kidnapper? Stockholm syndrome. This is fucking serious Stockholm syndrome shit. Well, maybe you should have thought twice before you committed the rest of your life to serving God. No, I know what the fuck I'm doing, trust me. It's not that. We're gonna get over this. We've been through harder shit than this before, trust me. This motherfucker ain't getting rid of me that fucking fast. Because, and the reason I say that is because God can't do anything bad. And the only reason that I'm thinking it's bad right now, you gotta understand, I'm a limited human, okay? I know how to see the good and the bad and the bad and the good, but first we have to get to that point. I'm not omniscient, you know what I mean? It takes me, I'm a little slow on the uptake. M-O-O-N, that spells moon. That's a reference from the Stand. So if you read The Stand or watched The Stand, you know what I'm talking about. But I'm a little slower on the uptake than God, right? So God needs me to figure this stuff out. So yeah, I'm losing my shit on God and calling God an asshole, but God understands why I'm doing it, because God knows what comes after this. So right now, what he's doing, he's telling me to envision a future, a very near future, where, you know in the Matrix when the Oracle's talking to Neo, the first time they meet, and he's all like kind of flustered after their talk, and she goes, "Here, have a cookie. By the time you're done eating it, I promise you'll be right as rain." Exactly. So what God's telling me is, imagine this is going to require a mustard seed sized ounce of faith. So let that little mustard seed represent the embryonic stage of a thought form that represents a vision of the near future where I have converted all that bad, all that shit that I was just losing my shit about into something good where I can go, "Oh my God, thank you, Lord. Oh my God, thank you, Lord. I just got it." It's forming. It's like think of it like the dominoes, like a stretch of dominoes. So what I just said, that it clicked, but whatever clicked, it's the first domino fell. So now it's kind of like beep, 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 beep. I'm just waiting for it to catch up with me, because we have to think that when I had that realization, like, "God, you're a fucking asshole, blah, blah, blah." All this time, this little path that we walked it from over there to over here to right there, and then we walked back again. So now we have to wait for that domino to go blah, 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 and catch up with time. And at the same time, that future moment is kind of falling backwards too, because time flows forwards and backwards at the same time. Because there's no resistance, because time's not a physical thing, there's nothing preventing time from flowing in two directions at the same time. So it's not that God's getting off on it, it's I'm getting off on it. Because I'm the sick one. Because I love this shit. I love emotional masochism, and I love suffering. But that's how he created me to be. Which, again, I knew since I was a kid. That's why I used to hate God so much. That's why I've hated God since I was a kid, because I knew, like, you just fucking created me so that you can watch me suffer. You love it. And it's true. But what he was trying to do, what my Lord was trying to do, I used to see it as a punishment, as punishment for something. So what my Lord has been wanting to teach, has been training me to do, grooming me to do, is to learn to love the suffering, so that I don't see it as suffering anymore. I can see it as a reward. Because if you can imagine how many bullets I've dodged throughout the course of my life because of the guidance of my Lord, the unseen hand, who's the one pulling the puppet strings, if I knew, I don't even know how many. Every single time where I think something bad happened to me, that was actually something, that was the best thing happening to me. But I couldn't see it at the time. We have to move forward in time before we can look back and see exactly why God did exactly what he did those things for. Like, my ex-wife and her family, they would have killed me. They would have had me killed already. Which I knew, because I felt the intuitive nature of it, because they wanted the house back. They wanted the house back. So they were planning on killing me. Not to mention the fact I would bet you that they planned on killing me a couple times over the past couple of years, but the fact I've been living at my mom's house has been the only thing holding them back, because they know that they couldn't get away with it. Because more than likely what they would have done, because we had a couple friends who have unregistered guns, so what they probably would have done is blown my brains out and made it look like a suicide. These aren't smart people. You gotta understand, I was saying before how this isn't, that there was no such thing as irreconcilable differences, because I had made the intention known. I made the intention known that I was leaving. I was divorcing my wife when my son turned 18. So when she got the divorce, when she filed for the divorce, and her lawyer advised her, or whoever the fuck advised her, to do it as irreconcilable differences. That wasn't the truth. That wasn't the truth. Because I wanted to settle out of court. But she wanted to get alimony. She wanted to have alimony hit on me so that I would have to be attached to her for another 6 years. And they would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for me and my pesky Torah. It's not that I wasn't in love with my wife. It's just we weren't married. We got married for insurance reasons. How you doing, my friend? So there wasn't anything to reconcile. That's what I mean. It's like it wasn't irreconcilable differences because there was nothing to reconcile. She was having an affair. She was already having an affair, which everybody knew about, including my son. For instance, the man that I believe that she's probably still dating now, she's been dating him since we were married. And knowing my ex-wife, they probably had sexual relations while we were still married. But anything that's outside of my own perception, my own peripherals, that's not my business. I don't know nothing about any of that. I forgive it. Because again, I'm going to turn to the Torah and Torah law. And we're going to go to the story of Joseph, the son of Jacob, who was sold into slavery by his brothers because they were jealous of his gift. He had the gift of foresight, and he could interpret dreams. He could see that God would speak to him through dreams. And while he was awake. So when Joseph told his family what his vision was, his brothers, out of their jealousy, they kidnapped him and sold him into slavery to prevent his vision from coming into fruition. But what they didn't know was that by doing exactly what they did, they set off the chain of predication that led to that vision coming into fruition. They literally planted the seed. Their original intention was to kill him, but instead they decided to sell him because it was more profitable to sell him than kill him. Not to mention, they didn't want to have that over their head that they killed their brother. But once Joseph was sold, and once Joseph was bought by an Egyptian aristocrat, the preceding events of his life ultimately led him to interpret the dream of Pharaoh. For which Pharaoh then hired Joseph to be his second in command, essentially the operations manager of the entire nation of Egypt. So years later, Joseph's reunited with his brothers. He's reunited with his brothers, but he's also reunited with his entire family, who find out that Joseph wasn't dead. Joseph's been gone for 19 years. His brothers went back to their father, Jacob. Peace be on him. The brothers went back to Jacob with the special coat that Jacob had given Joseph to designate his authority over his brothers. They dipped it in animal blood and said that Joseph was killed. So this man, Jacob, he went 19 years thinking that his son was dead before they were reunited. And he found out that his son was sold into slavery and was was handed the ring of power for the entire nation of Egypt. The only person above Joseph was Pharaoh. The Egyptians thought Joseph was a fucking god. And technically he was. Lowercase g, a god under God. But after Jacob died, the brothers, they go to Joseph, pleading and groveling for forgiveness. And he said to them, I'm not a replacement for God. I know you intended to do evil, but God intended to do good. Because look at all these lives. Look at all these lives that were saved because of what you did. Now they begged Joseph to not make them slaves. But like Joseph said, I'm not a replacement for God. Don't beg me. Don't seek forgiveness from me. I could see the good in what you did. I could see the good in your evil. But what ended up happening? A new Pharaoh comes to power after Joseph dies, who doesn't know Joseph. Nobody remembers Joseph. A couple pharaohs go by. A few generations pass. And this new Pharaoh doesn't know who Joseph is. And he sees the Jews, he sees the Israelites as slaves. And he enslaves them, which gives rise to Moses and then no. But my point is, I forgive all that shit. I don't want to. I would love to get like gnarly fucking revenge and just have to watch these people fucking suffer. I would love it. I would love it so much. And that believe it or not, as much as I don't like to say it, but even my son, I would like to see my son have to get like a good lashing. Like a good fucking beating. Because the kid, he's not 18 for another couple months. So, but he's gonna be 18 in a couple months. And once he's 18, alright, hey, listen, nigga, you didn't want nothing to do with me then. Take a hike ski. You had the past 7 years. And that goes for his mother too. Oh, we moved on from you. Oh yeah? Okay. Both of you. Yep. Okay. Well, don't you think that she was trying to emotionally manipulate you into thinking that your son hated you? Yes and no. Bonnie and Clyde, those two have even when we were still a cohesive family unit, it was always them versus me. They defy me. That was the way of it. I was too busy working to ensure that we had money to survive because I valued money more than my family life. Well, I was one of those people who said that I don't have a choice. I have to do it this way. So it's not like I didn't do something that every other single working class person does. But at least at this point, I'm self-aware enough that I can look at it and go, yeah. Listen, the relationship that he doesn't want to have with me, I see it. I understand. I get it. And besides, that's a blessing from God. Again, God set all this stuff up because there's no way I would be able to do what I've been doing if I had my son in my life, if I had anyone in my life. And the same goes for Mrs. Kim. Not Mrs. Kim, Miss Kim. I said Mrs. Kim, assuming that Miss Kim is actually my future wife. And it's not that It's not that I would want Miss Kim to be my wife because it would make my ex-wife jealous. No. It's not, I can't help it that Miss Kim is like my perfect ideal image of a woman. That's on God. I didn't do that. I didn't make the girl. You know what I mean? But going back to what we were talking about earlier, which was why is it that I can't talk to her? Because the way you explain it to me is that she's the Eve to my Adam. And at the same time, she's my forbidden fruit. So I can't. How do we put this? I can't. Okay, so if she's the forbidden fruit, I can't eat her until she offers. You know what I mean? When she says eat it, okay. And then when God says, I told you not to do that, why'd you do it? Because you didn't say not to if she offered. That Adam, why did you eat the fruit? I told you not to. I know, but you didn't tell me to not obey her. You didn't tell me that your commandments supersede hers. If I knew that, I wouldn't have done it. Now, at the same time, now check this out though, right? So remember how we were saying that the serpent was a container for the divine spark. The serpent was a container for the Shekinah, the internal aspect of God. So just as we said that God was talking to the serpent, that's why Eve was able to communicate with the serpent. They were having a telepathic conversation because they both were in touch, the divine feminine that's within everything. Women have a much closer relationship with the divine feminine than men do. So the serpent wouldn't have been able to communicate with Adam the way that it communicated with Eve, just as Eve would not have been able to communicate with God the way that Adam was able to communicate with God. That's why, you think about witches, how witches, like, they get in tune with nature. Women, they're very in touch with nature. Yeah, that's why. Because women can't, as far as I'm aware, women can't tap into that aspect of God that men can. That's why when we say he, we're talking about God, the father of our father and our father's fathers. God's connected to the Y chromosome, which is unique to Adam. Eve doesn't have a Y chromosome. She has two X chromosomes. She has an X chromosome where Adam had a Y. Okay? You feeling me? So think of it like the X chromosome represents the Shekinah within, the feminine aspect of God, and the Y chromosome represents the external God. So, just as God was communicating to Eve through the serpent, God was also communicating to Adam through Eve. So why didn't Adam just say that? Because Adam didn't know fucking Kabbalah, that's why. If I knew then what I know now, you know what I mean? Do you feel me? If I knew then what I knew now. So if Adam was a Kabbalist and was trained in the fucking the Hasidic arts, the philosophy of Hasidim, then Adam would have said exactly what I just said. One of those two renditions. Well, you told me to. What do you mean I told you to? Well, you were talking to me through her. Well, how do you know? Because she contains a divine spark just like me. Or he would have said, I ate it because you didn't warn me. You didn't prepare me for her. You didn't tell me that she could do that. And or you didn't tell me to not obey her. and or because I couldn't say no. Do you understand? Do you see where I'm getting? And the nice thing about where Adam is coming from is that Adam didn't have a choice. Adam literally didn't have a choice. No one told him, you can take responsibility for your actions. Again, if I knew then what I know now, right? If I knew then what I knew now, then things would have been a lot different. But they're not, because that wasn't the way that things had to play out. And realistically, here's the other thing, there's no way to know it before then. There was no way to know it before now. But that's the point of tikkun olam, the rectification of the worlds, of the shards, of the vessels, is to convert transgressions into merits. So I redeemed humanity by recognizing that there was no original sin. And I know, they say that Jesus was supposed to do that, but here's the thing, Jesus didn't do it, I just did. Or you know what, how about this? As a spiritual descendant of Jesus, as a spiritual descendant of Jesus. Just like I'm a spiritual descendant of Adam, right? How about that? If you can't handle the idea that I'm a genetic ancestor, even though it's the same thing, but as a spiritual ancestor or descendant of Jesus Christ, he did redeem humanity through me. So that's why I can't talk to Miss Kim, because it's not that I can't talk to her. I can't talk to her first. And you know what? Let's even say that was the caveat. That was the caveat that God didn't tell Adam, you will not eat of this fruit first. She's got to make the first move. Which, now, if we look at it from that lens, like, we're learning about female psychology too, how God set up female psychology. You have to let women make the first move. Don't tell them what to do, because if you tell them what to do, or if you tell them what not to do, they're going to do it anyway. So don't give them any orders. Just let them do whatever the fuck they're going to do, and trust that they're doing what they're doing because that's what God set them up to do. Even if it involves another man. Because at the end of the day, it's all for my benefit anyway, so. Shavuot, the receiving of the Torah, the 50th gate, the crowning. This is the crowning. So all of that hard work that we put into the account of Omer over the past 7 weeks, 7 fucking weeks, can you imagine that? 49 straight days of emotional introspection. Fuck. I love being a Jew so fucking much. Yeah, but I thought your mother had to be a Jew. Yeah, so about that. My Lord, can you help me with this one? Yes. So there's more than one kind of Jew. So what you're talking about is rabbinical Judaism. Rabbinical Judaism has its own Torah that it created, which is called the Talmud, the oral tradition. So the rabbinical laws, in order for me to be considered, to be recognized as an Orthodox Jew, my mother would have to be Jewish. And realistically, that's just that's a religious Jew. I'm not a religious Jew. I'm an ethnic Jew. And it comes from my father's side. But now we have evidence that my mother has Hebrew ancestry on her side too. So that's fine. So I'm good. My father's got Israelite ancestry on his side. My mother appears to have Hebrew ancestry on her side. So we're good. I'm an ultra unorthodox Jew, which is the counterbalance to Orthodox Jews. I also come from a line of Italian Jews called the Italkim, where the Orthodox Jews tend to come from the Ashkenazi and the Sephardi Jews. So the Italkim Jews are older than both of those by about 1,000 years. Well, we know this because my Y chromosome originates, and I know this from just my own family research. My Y chromosome originates from the Lakewood of Italy. The Lakewood, New Jersey of Italy. Which is where all of the Italkim pretty much congregated during the Roman times, which is southern Italy. Cosenza, Calabria, Italia, specifically in Acri. So I'm not bound by the same rabbinical laws. Because rabbinical Judaism elevates the oral law above the written law, which, from my perspective, is a violation of the written law. Because the written law says you shall not add or subtract, but the oral law adds and subtracts. So the written law says you shall not add or subtract from this. The oral law adds and subtracts from it. So, for instance, today is Shavuot, right? There's only one day. Come on. Shavuot's only one day. But then the other Jews, I only recognize it as being one day because that's what the written law says. The oral law, they allow it for 2 days. So they're adding. Just like with Passover. The oral law allows for 8 days. 8 days of Passover, but there's only 7. Well, technically there's only one. There's only 1 day of Passover and 7 days of the festival of unleavened bread. And this is a conversation I've been having with my mother is the other Jews, the Orthodox Jews, the religious Jews, they just make up their own shit. They just make shit up. The rabbis just make up how they want to do things. Excuse me. So it's not that I don't recognize Talmudic law. I do. I study it. But it's a lot of adding and subtracting that is unnecessary. And at times a violation of the law from my perspective. Because that whole thing about your mother has to be Jewish, that's not in the written law at all. It actually says the opposite of that. And the verses that are quoted in the Talmud to propagate that myth are completely taken out of context. In that, out of the entire paragraph, the context of the entire paragraph, only one sentence is used. For which the rabbis then went, okay, well this means that. And there was a reason why they did it. It was to prevent a certain genealogical bloodline from establishing power who had the authority to overrule all of the rabbinical injunctions. Which is all spelled out in Jewish history. So if you know anything about the Hasmonean dynasty and the fuckery that went on with that whole situation, where the Hasmonean priest kings, who were from the bloodline of Aaron, they had the authority to overrule any of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Until insiders triggered a civil war that eventually Rome was going to get called in to settle. And then Rome had the entire family executed, which then gave the Pharisees and Sadducees, gave the Pharisees power, which led to the rise of the rabbis. It's a really fucked up history. Which is why I've been kind of vocal about the fact that I'm taking authority, I'm taking Sanhedrin authority. I am the Sanhedrin. Because God gave me the authority. God gave me the authority to do exactly that. So that I would do that. Which ultimately, in the future, very well should, lead to some shit. Because my Lord, our Father in heaven, gave me more authority than the entire collective of rabbis today. Because unlike them, unlike any of them, I can actually talk to God, and He tells me that I have more authority than them because of the fact that I have Him and they don't. because I'm accepting the offer that he made to Rabbi Jesus and the offer that he made to Rabbi Moses, which was, I'll make you a new nation. And the world is mine to give. You can have it. All right. All right. I'll take it. I'll take both, as a matter of fact. Alright, so it's, what are we at? 2 hours? Not too bad. It's literally 2 hours since we said that we have 2 hours. Okay. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna go home, we're gonna take a pee break, then we're gonna get back to doing this month's review. I feel good about this one. My lord, how about you? What? Cool. Alright. We got the review, then what else do we got? Anything else of like really grave importance that we need to get to? I don't think so. I think that's the most important thing, is just to get the review done. Okay. And my lord, is there anything else that you want me to touch on? Because we're almost back at the house. How do I feel about this? Oh, I feel great. This was good. I think we did a spectacular thing. Damn it. All right, I guess that's it. All right, my lord, I'll talk to you as soon as I'm done. Turn this off. Love you too.